Hey mom, what were your past boyfriends like? Mom? You okay, mom? Mom?
Alright, so we've all had our fair share of bad boyfriends. And I'm sure to a lot of you guys this is going to sound very, very similar to what you've been through. How do I know? It happened to me and it's happened to a couple of my friends. But today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the worst boyfriend I've ever had, what happened, and why it happened. So to protect people's privacy, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be calling my ex-boyfriend Dan. Dan was family friends with my family, as in his dad and my dad worked together. And although me and Dan didn't talk very much throughout growing up, we always knew what each other were up to and we kind of knew what was going on in our families. And we went to school together, but we always kept our distance. After graduating, I was at a bar and I happened to run into him, and he was there trying to get the popular girl drunk. He was spending a lot of money on her, and I could tell that it was pretty clear what his mission was. I kind of left them alone and wandered around for a bit, and then I decided to go home. It was winter at this time, extremely cold. I'd say minus 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but trust me, it's cold. I drove home in my car and I was in bed. It was about 3 a.m. when I got a phone call from Dan. And I guess he had run out of money because he spent it all on that girl and had no way of getting home. And in Dan's drunk mind, walking in minus 40 degree weather from the ranch to his house, which is a 2-hour walk, seemed like a good idea. So he found himself in a bus stop, curled up, cold, and not knowing what to do. And I guess I was the only person on his phone that he thought would be willing to drive him. I'm not a bad person. If somebody needs my help, I'm gonna give them help. So I got my ass out of bed, I got in my car, and I drove him home. This was the beginning of a courtship which would end in a disaster. Shortly after that, me and Dan started dating. Dan would do things like convince me to go to a strip club with him, which I was really uncomfortable with, and would back it up with, if you don't do it, you're lame, or people are going to think that you're weird, and you need to do it if you care about me. I would make it all the way to the strip club, and as I was, being pulled out of the car, I would have a panic attack and I wouldn't be able to go inside. So what did Dan do? Tell me to wait in the back seat in minus 40 degrees Celsius weather and wait for him to come back. And when he came back, he told me that I would never look like any of those girls. Now you'd think any sane girl would hear that and go, alright, you're a dick, I'm leaving. But again, a reoccurring theme that I keep talking about in my videos is I didn't like myself at the time, and I was convinced that I was even lucky to get somebody like that. I was very lonely at the time, and I felt like my family hated me. I didn't have very many friends, and Dan definitely knew that. And from there it just got worse, and by worse I mean we would start to fight. And what did we fight about? We would fight about me finding messages that were a little bit suspicious. We would fight about things that I heard that he did or said. We would fight about if I was doing something wrong. When I started wanting to go to school, he would fight me tooth and nail about that. He didn't want me going to school. He didn't want me working out. He wanted me to gain weight. He told me that I was better looking when I gained weight. And eventually those fights got nastier and nastier and nastier, to the point where he was telling me that I was a whore and a used tissue and all of this awful shit. He would call me fat, he would call me ugly, and right when I would be at the pinnacle of just feeling like shit, he would convince me that I didn't have anybody in my life other than him, and I needed him. Because I didn't love myself and I didn't know how I was supposed to be treated, I allowed him to do this for 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. And about 1.5 years in, Dan actually blew his knee out. And my uncle, being a surgeon, offered to bump him up the list and get him in early. After he was bumped in on the list and got in early, I took care of him. I drove him, I bathed him, I cooked for him, I cleaned his dishes, and this went on for about 6 months. So fast forward those 6 months and I'm in the study hall at the U of A when I run into a mutual friend of ours. And he starts talking to me, and we're talking, and he says, "I'm really glad that you forgave Dan for what he did. You guys seem happier." And I paused, and I was like, "What do you mean for what he did?" And you could already tell that the gears were turning, and he was like, "I said something that I shouldn't have said." And before I could question him anymore, he was gone. I had this really bad gut feeling, like this was an unavoidable issue, that finally I don't think that he was going to be able to lie his way out of this. And I started calling around, and I finally got in touch with one of my friends who broke down and basically said, yes, one of our friends has slept with and has been sleeping with your boyfriend. Hearing that news was probably the hardest thing I've heard, because not only did it mean that I was being lied to by my boyfriend, but it also means that I had been lied to by my friends. I guess I was forced to face something that I should have faced a long time ago. I should have recognized how unhealthy things were and how terrible things were, and I should have left a long time ago, and I didn't, because I didn't like myself enough. What I'm trying to say is, sometimes you need to make cuts out of your life, and that's perfectly fine. For me in this situation, it was a giant cut. I cut everyone out of my life. My close friends, my boyfriend, and I was completely alone. But you know what? That birthed an excellent relationship, and I found this beautiful creature right here, and we bonded and became very close, and she would be the cornerstone for me starting my journey of figuring out me and what makes me happy. Because after that, I was single for quite a long time. I was definitely not going to date after that. I hope that you guys enjoyed my story, and I will be back again another time with a new video, but as for now, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening, and peace.